are not are often more risk averse type nature people, just anecdotally, what we noticed. But it also comes with a lot of legitimate and also probably to some degree illegitimate sort of things that come out when you try to talk around open data. And I mean, some of this is funny because we've been talking about this for years, but so things like all the classic, like the data is not good enough, it's not ready, it's too sensitive. Common people won't understand this data, like the sort of often there's that approach around needing an expert kind of insight for the data capacity. Always, like I'll work with cities and other forms of government are often just, we'd love, like, even if you get them all on board, we'd love to, but we don't have the capacity or the skills or both, or like the need to wait on some sort of official policy. And so I think really understanding, and a lot of those are legitimate concerns. We actually, a while back, we put together an open data toolkit for cities that listed all of these sorts of challenges or reasons that often come in the way of opening access to information from a public institution and some of the mitigations around them, which I'm happy to share. It was based on some of the work that Open North, another really cool organization in Canada, did. But I think, one of the biggest things there is to understand incentives and to really try to meet the need, show the benefits, show the positive. I mean, in cases where people are using data, that the positive response, which really means needing to understand the demand and like opening maybe less data, but being more intentional about it and understanding the real core impact it's having, because many people work in government do actually have ideals and ethics and want to be doing good work. Not all. Also understand the barriers that exist and try to mitigate with perhaps additional capacity, which is where funding and partnerships come in place.
If you could give us a specific example of you with a specific department, maybe the specific story.
Sure. So, I mean, one of the projects we work on is setting up a platform called SCODA, which is done in partnership with the South African Cities Network. And the intention is ultimately to offer this sort of platform or the ability for cities to take on this tool and use it to help them share information. So one of the projects we've worked on in collaboration with now eThekwini municipality and also now eKhaleni and City of Joburg is this project. The eThekwini iteration is called EDGE. So it's with the Economic Development Department. So you can find the site at edge.durban. And so a lot of these lessons, we started to see as being an economic or strategy unit, which is often where you can find a lot of alignment for wanting to share data, or where decision makers are coming to a city, business or communities. The work that it was quite interesting. EDGE was an existing publication around economic information, but required a lot of information that would be pulled through from line departments like water and electricity and others. And so what was quite interesting is once we had that champion on board and in terms of that department and those people, there was the start of this and learning these lessons in some of these environments we spoke about, but they have an incentive to share information to promote better economic decision making, and that's the kind of metrics they're measured on. So I think a lot of the panelists will kind of agree that often finding, again, the incentives, one of them that can be very direct is what are your KPIs or KPAs, or how is your performance managed inside the city. But then watching them also have to engage with and struggle to overcome the siloed nature of data, these similar questions, was quite interesting. But I think it was very powerful once they had bought into the idea to have them as a government department advocating for opening access to information and opening access to data, because then it was sort of coming from within. And I think a very material example right now is COVID. So we were very privileged to be able to work with some cities on support for COVID in various different ways. And I don't want to go into any specific examples too deeply yet, but right now, something that was certainly very interesting was in the light of the crisis, how many of the barriers that I suppose were more superfluous fell away. And we could focus more on the real legitimate barriers there were to being able to either have an information flow either in to out or out to in, or in between different departments to make quick decisions and also to support communities. Especially a lot of our work was around informal settlements and in vulnerable communities and cities in South Africa, and just sort of seeing, which of these reasons are real barriers that need a real intervention in terms of structural change versus ones that need sort of man management or person management, and change management and sort of culture change.
Great, thank you so much. Maybe Adrian could share a story of challenge.
Specifically, the one project that I managed, which is Vulekamali, the national budget portal, I realized that, I'd worked for 16 years in the public sector, so I only had this viewpoint of data or information not being made available to the public. So I only understood that, I was very reluctant within my space as a public official to ever give information to somebody that requested information. When I started that project, I understood the fact why government is so apprehensive, for that matter. And we had civil society as a strong partner in the project, and they obviously advocated on behalf of the general public in terms of citizens. And the request was always to make more information available, make more data data available, procurement data, in-year monitoring data. And what I realized is the biggest challenge is that we didn't understand the complexities of the system of government, in that even if they have the appetite to make the data available, it's not a tomorrow I contact Richard kind of conversation, and Richard's going to just, give me a Dropbox and the data is there. It's a whole meticulous way of getting the necessary approvals. And even when those approvals are found, that the data is still not in its entirety given to you. We started developing user stories, things that gave them a sense of why this is so important to the general public. A good example is the Office of the Procurement Officer. We worked closely with one of the directors, and he could not understand why the general public would want information around procurement. And when we started explaining to him, giving him user stories, and then he only realized, wow, I'm actually going to be part of your championing process to get this to the Office of the Procurement Officer, to get that memo signed. So that was been the biggest challenge in terms of Vulekamali. But I also feel that was also one of the realization. We started tailoring the project to accept this, to understand that this is part of the process. And when we started engaging with civil society, we were quite pragmatic in our endeavors with civil society in various provinces to say that we hear your request, for procurement data. We will put that forward in terms of our agile process and to the client, but this is possibly what will only be made available within this space. Over a period of time, there might be that opportunity for further data to be released. So for me, that has been a big learning experience. I think in Open Up as well, we have the similar project, Municipal Money, which is a lot easier. But it's because the champion, the person that we've been working with, is so eager to want to make this information available to citizens in the local government space. So it's tit for tat in terms of government, but it's understanding I would say understanding the system thoroughly that makes it a bit easier.
But maybe let me ask another question. As a civic tech organization, we have our head down the whole time. And we found over the years that we've become less and less agile to world events. So COVID comes along and everyone asks us, oh, what are you guys doing for COVID? And it's sort of embarrassing to say, well, we've got a lot of other work to do. So we haven't been able to do it. Maybe my question is, now in Nigeria, there's this serious event going on. What sort of flexibility do you guys have to realign some of your activities and say, what, we had all these programs, but they have to be put on hold because it's something a lot more critical. So I'm just curious, thinking about the organization, and are you guys agile enough to deal with it? And, do you have any kind of difficulties, switching over?
Basically for us, we took it very much upon ourselves to still work with COVID. We have a platform which is launched on Civic. I manage Civic. It's called COVID Tracker, where we track all the fundings that has been coming into the country and also try to see how much states have received and how much federal government has received. You can find it on www.civicarchive.org/COVID tracker. We make sure we are able to track, although it's very hard because most of these government officials audit the data. putting out, we sent letters to all the states in Nigeria. Only few of them responded, right? And we sent FOI as well, which is the Freedom of Information Act, to some states, and only a few of them has responded, right? And it's quite hard to put out unverified information because that actually qualifies as, yes, that's the link. Yeah. So because if you don't verify information and put it out, that qualifies as fake news. But we in the heat of the whole pandemic in Nigeria, we went all in, updating the platform, putting out daily incidents of COVID in Nigeria, and also trying to put out how much the federal government has received, also trying to see how much state government have received, and also how much state government has spent so far in the time of. Interestingly, right now, part of the chaos happening in the country, the warehouse was just broken into right now as I'm speaking to you, and the private people who donated food items was just locked up in the warehouse. This is October, after all the curfew has been lifted, and the warehouse they've been looting that warehouse since 8 o'clock in the morning until now. The warehouse has not gotten to half. So it goes to show you that the materials that we're supposed to give to people, to the poor people of the community, are locked up, right? And what's motive, we don't know. So it goes to tell you that it's hard to actually get the real scenario of things. But the little we are able to work with, we don't stay back. We go all in and make sure that we put it out there for people to see and for people to be able to work with. I had a lot of talks, a lot of conferences, a lot of panels, and honestly, the only win for us as a country is that, in as much as the Western world has said we will pick up dead bodies on the streets, we were able to adhere to the restrictions, which is using a face mask and also helping to treat people even via local means and also via some drugs, helping people to quickly overcome the whole pandemic in the country. And that's a very important win for us, even as a country. But apart from that, management of information has been poor, most especially by the state actors, where you expect them to give you happenings and all of that. And we also analyzed a lot of the fundings and a lot of expenses that the government claimed they made. As a civil society organization, you want to put out the truth and nothing but the truth. We got a lot of backlash because we were saying too much of the truth, because there are some ridiculous spendings that the government made, and we were able to establish that a lot of people made themselves billionaires out of the whole COVID situation. So the facts are all out there. We try our best. We still try as much as possible to release nothing but the truth, but it's actually very hard. In as much as we civil society organizations are trying, even by collaborating with other civil society organizations like Code, most especially like SIXLAC, like CDD, we try to bring out, and SERAP, we try to bring out the truth for people to see. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to also ask you very briefly, what's the challenge in terms of engaging the citizens? Like how many subscribers there are for Tracker that you mentioned?
For us, we also honestly do not have so much challenges in engaging citizens because we understand the indigenous languages. We make sure we communicate with them in the language they understand. We put out booklets in their language so that they could hold their constituency representative to account of what is going on in their communities. So honestly, because we hold town hall meetings from time to time, even at Civic Hive, we hold town hall meetings for people that considerably in the urban areas. Even for people in the rural areas, we have tracker officers in almost 27 states of the country, right? We have 32 states in Nigeria, and we have 27 states covered by tracker, where we have representatives who speak to the people in their indigenous languages. We also have a program called Community Champions, where people that are actually residents in the community take it upon themselves to educate other people in the community. And I must tell you, it's had a lot of backlash, most especially by thugs for hire and also people that disrupt the peace of the community. Our politicians are very, very cruel. Let me use that word, because they keep people poor so that they can direct and use them in terms of politics. And that's what we're seeing right now. The looting and the killing that we are seeing right now are the monsters they've made, and they cannot control them anymore, right? It's crazy out there right now. It's a war zone. So honestly, it's for people to be able to ask questions, right? When you say you've spent so billions amount of money on COVID funds, you should reflect in what people are eating. You should reflect in what people are wearing. You should reflect in what is happening in that community at that particular point in time.
Thank you very much. To the next round of and the final round of questions. Are there any emerging opportunities in civic tech space, and would you like to engage with this? And what would you need in terms of resources and collaborations? Also, the challenges that we were talking about.
Challenges and opportunities. COVID has been incredibly good for civic tech. Bad for the world, but very good for civic tech, because I think finally we've realized that government officials do know how to use Zoom. They do have internet, it works. We haven't had to fly to Pretoria to have any meetings, in the last while. What that means is that engagement becomes a lot easier, and people have now become a lot more used to it. So just this general idea that telecommunications can be an important part of business in general. It's not new, the tech isn't new, but I think the way that people engage with it is new. And I just want to read just an extract from an email that I received from a municipal manager speaking about the citizen engagement app. And he says, with the COVID pandemic expected to still be with us for another 12 to 18 months, and pursuant to this, we will not be able to do public participation, which is the legislative requirement for almost everything that we do. It has become imperative that we find means to enhance participation without the need of having public meetings. This is something we've been speaking about for years, right? But just as a bunch of techies who know how to use Skype, that's where we've come from. This is a significant shift where, the head of a municipality has said, well, how do we go forward? Participation is important, and we just can't do it in town hall meetings. What do we do? That was just we are now allocating budget to figure out how we're going to be doing this over the next 24 months. I think that's incredible. That is, it seems like just a little snippet out of an email, but for me, that is really big. Associated with that is lack of internet, and we've already seen, even on this call, that this is an issue. How do we deal with this participation issue when people don't have access? And historically, we've said, oh, well, people, they're getting smartphones and, they can use WhatsApp. That's not enough, right? So what we need is high-speed broadband internet to every remote corner of the earth, because the digital divide has never been more stark than during the lockdowns, where many of us continued with our work without even noticing, right? Some people, took a little while to adjust, but that was perfectly fine. Other people were stuck at home with nothing to do and just completely disconnected from the world. Again, this is not something new, but in terms of where to next, I really think that infrastructure around access to internet has now gone up a notch in terms of importance. So water, electricity, sanitation, roads, internet. I would say that all of those things in the same sentence, and other things as well. So anyway, I think online participation, but then it begs the question, where is the internet?
Well, that's impressive. So Florence, did you observe some opportunities that arose because of COVID?
Yes and no, to some extent, because in Africa, we are still struggling with, of course, access to internet and connectivity, especially to specific target audience. So if you want to do government training, like getting everybody online on Zoom, it's always tough. The only training we did was we had to wait for COVID to slow down before we did a training for NDPC and then Ministry of Local Government. But building capacity, we discovered that, look, people are online, people have been forced, especially like kids and school children, they've been forced to sit at home. How do they learn? So one of the things that we did is to start online training programs using Zoom and using other mediums as well. So that was quite new. We were not doing that actively. Once in a while we would do something, but it was not consistent. But now it has become part and parcel. We've streamlined online training, capacity building into our work. And that was the opportunity that it brought as well.
So are there any other opportunities in the recent past that you observe?
This has really taught us to develop like some new projects that would, number one, still keep people connected to the government. How like recently, I think we were approached by one of the national institutions to develop a citizen engagement application for them. So it means that like when, for instance, when there is a conference, when people can meet physically, they need a platform to be able to connect. And I think that in Ghana, as well as some parts of Africa, people have obviously have seen the need for technology. Those days it's like you have to talk a lot to be able to say, hey, use this platform. For instance, in our Open Cities Africa project, we develop like an online data application that's all the data sets we collected from all the communities. We worked in about 4 communities, the geospatial data, and then map and digital map. We put all of those things on the platform for the government agencies to access. And we noticed that sometimes they'll come to us, can you print out the map for us? Can we have a hard copy of the map? Can we do this? And we give it to them. But now they've seen that, look, if the thing is online, they might as well go and have access to it. So in Africa, people have seen the need to use technology more in their work and also in their lives as well. So that is really an opportunity, and it makes our work a bit easier. And also other school institutions. I remember some school institutions, because schools have been closed, like the proprietors were not making money, they were like everything. So they needed to innovate new ways of connecting to students and also getting some form of funding.
Thanks so much. Anyone wants to say anything on emerging, Richard?
I mean, I think in terms of emerging opportunities, I think I would echo what's been said here is like we need to be boring a little bit and go back to fundamentally making sure that there is, renewed interest in internet access issues, open source and open data stuff, finding new ways to connect them to the needs of now. So I think like, as Adi says, and we've heard from other speakers, trying to really rebase and understand the roles these play in core ability for communities and others to have, be so during crises. It's quite interesting. I saw a tweet earlier where there was someone out of some of our friends in the Japanese community that says if we're talking about industry 4.0, we should be aiming for society 5.0, and that society should always be ahead of, the sort of and societal kind of equipping society and I think that's an interesting idea. Like, where are we within our continent around looking at sort of how to equip society to deal with whatever's coming? Because I think, what I think the opportunities are or the risks are is that as we move further into the data age, we're going to need to start looking at machine learning, machine-based decision making, and these sorts of elements with the same sort of insights and same transparency and accountability and literacy and capacity building as we have data. And so I think there's a need for focus to a degree there, but also, going to the fundamentals of, just internet access to a sort of acceptable quality for everyone, as was mentioned. Just using what exists. I think like the more we can learn, it's really hard to collaborate. It's really hard to get your head up. I think Adi said, we've all got our heads down and it's hard for us to pivot and iterate according to need, but it's also hard for us to collaborate. So the more and more, I think just trying to look to what exists and continue trying to support areas where we're reusing tools and process and approaches, learning from each other, sessions like this, I think that's really important to continue to focus on. So I don't think any of that's groundbreaking, but I really think like, it's sort of coming back to those fundamentals in light of like what's going on now.
Adi was saying that finding new ways of using the same technology or old or existing technology. So Catherine, would you like to share anything in terms of emerging opportunities?
No, I think what we saw was just, and I completely agree with Adi, is that one of the benefits of needing to go online is that everybody's getting comfortable with being able to connect online. This week is the World Data Forum, which is this gigantic, UN biannual meeting for the SDGs and how they're being and what data is being used to track the SDGs. The first one was in Cape Town. And these are, just big boisterous events. They're very helpful, especially, as we all know from conferences, the hallway conversations, who do you get to meet? How do you connect? But unless you have the visa to go to the location and the travel money to go there, you don't get to be as represented. And I think, people being more comfortable with having virtual spaces and being able to connect and meet each other online is really important. And for organizations that are based in cities or based in cities in, London, Bangkok, New York City, that are used to having really good internet access, it can be, I think the tolerance that people are starting to have for having bad internet connection and difficulty in connecting online, that might seem trivial, but it's real. Because if you're going to do work with people, you have to work with them around the world and where they're at. And I think that this has been a helpful awakening of how poorly the internet infrastructure is. And that's not Africa. I mean, it's in the US too. It's a poor in a lot of places. So I think those are our opportunities there. I also think that there's some really good opportunities. We at data.org, we were just starting out. And so we wanted to do a kind of landscape of who is out there who's using data science in inclusive growth. And when coronavirus hit, we said, well, let's make sure that we communicate that inclusive growth means recovery and resilience. And so we've got these 1,200 applications from 109 countries around the world. We're sifting through them. And I think it's fair to say that what we see a lot is if your organization doesn't have data integrated into your design, into how you think about problem solving and how you think about adapting, then a lot of the suggestions that we got could have been written 2 or 3 years ago. And it was a lot of smaller organizations that had set themselves up to be more adaptive. I recognize that Adi said, people are asking, well, what are you doing about COVID? We have a lot of other work to do, but I'm also confident that, Open Up and Open Cities and others would have been able, if the methodology that you were using wasn't working and COVID was disrupting that you would have been able to change. And we're just seeing that there's a lot of organizations that don't adapt quickly. So again, with my hat, if I can put it on from a kind of donor perspective, if you're looking for, support and work, I think the way that you differentiate yourself and stand out is by, being able to be responsive to the specific conditions of the moment. And, that's quite hard to do. And it's hard to do when you're in government because government is slower and moves more slowly by design. And so if you're in the civic tech space, being the partner who can adapt more quickly, that's going to be a real value. And I didn't get to share the sort of my perspective on how to get these things done in government, but I just want to, completely support what Florence and what others have been saying about finding your champion inside government and also, helping them look good and helping them tell their story. It's very difficult to be motivated to change when you don't have a lot of power inside these very powerful institutions. And so the way you do get motivated to fight through all that bureaucracy to make a change is if you can really see how it's helping somebody else. And that's what the civic tech community can really do, is to say, like, if you help me a bit, here's immediately how I'm going to apply that. And it starts to cascade kind of a good feeling and a good impact of the work that they're doing.
Thanks so much. Yeah, New Luwa, would you like to share something on emerging opportunities? How are you trying to be part of that change?
Well, for us, I would say we were able to start exactly at 5 years of budget. We were able to start Civic Hive project. The Civic Hive project has been in forefront of trying to bring new opportunities, more like giving new civic tech organizations the platform to start, and also the platform to incubate them and also find their voice. For example, we have close to like 20 civil society organizations that has passed through Civic Hive at the moment, and we're able to see them tackle one problem at a time in Nigeria. It's been going on well, not without its own challenges, and but then we've tried as much as possible to bring a bridge between the people and the government. We've been trying to push these civic tech organizations out there by giving them the support and also introducing them to people that can help them push their own mission and vision statements and bring real change to this community. So that's how we've been able to engage in bringing more opportunities to the people and also to leaders in the civic tech space.
Yeah, thank you so much. Adrian, would you like to say something?
Thanks, Rodica. I think just one thing I wanted to say was that when I started, I said that COVID-19 was more of a blessing in disguise for the civic tech community. And I also wanted to just allude to the fact that I think, and this is just an assumption, I think the general public, besides government and besides all business sector, but I think the general public has also had to upskill themselves in terms of digital literacy. That allows, because regardless of whether we make the data available, if there isn't an appetite or there isn't a level of literacy within the country, the usage of that tool, that app, or that data that's available to the citizen becomes redundant. They won't be able to use it. But I think with COVID-19, I mean, I see my grandma using a smartphone as she should, not anymore just for SMSing or just calling. So she actually knows how to do other things now. And I think the fact that COVID-19 has spearheaded this thinking that the reality is that we might not ever be able to do things the way we should. And I think that within our space, we're now able to, when we engage with government or when we engage even with users, we're able to quickly assess, having worked on Vulekamali and municipal money. One of the biggest challenges we faced were the fact that when we did our outreach, communities weren't able to understand just the basic fundamentals of computers literacy. Yeah, I'm hoping that as a result of COVID-19, when we start really looking into opening up data in our country or with communities, that level is a bit higher. We've been fortunate enough to partner with a cool organization, Geek Culture, and even through that experience, we've seen that in the most rural of communities, the access to good connectivity is null, not even 5% if I had to do the whole measurement, but actually not. And people are eager, young people are especially eager to want to learn new skills in terms of digital skills and even in terms of data. So I look forward to the next 12 months. As bad as COVID-19 has been in terms of the global pandemic, I always I've seen it as small little buds of opportunities just generally coming to fruition.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for giving your time to the civic tech community. Thanks very much.